I'll start from the beginning for the audio because it may not have been captured from the I welcome all members of the public who have joined us in person and online to observe tonight's proceedings. I'd like to advise that tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. All care has been taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor into the gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event that your voice and or image is broadcast by council. As with all council meetings, we are taking questions from the public and encourage you to submit your questions in accordance to our normal practice. As we transition back to in-person meetings, we will continue to take questions from members of the public who do not feel comfortable in attending the meeting in person. In these circumstances, our CEO will read out the questions. A response will be provided where we have the information on hand. If we're unable to provide a meaningful response, we will take your question on notice and provide a response in writing. We will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person and 2 questions on any issue. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions in writing through the normal channels. Council meetings are conducted in accordance with our governance rules. I will introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda, calling it by name and by reading the title. I will then call for a mover and a seconder of the motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors are able to join the debate on any item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. Item number 2, apologies and requests for leave of absence. There are no apologies and no leave of absence. Item number 3, prior notification of conflict of interest. No prior notifications of conflict of interest have been received. Councillors, would anyone like to give notice of a conflict of interest? No. Item number 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Conlon.
So I'd like to move that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 22nd of March 2022 be confirmed.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goff. Councillor Conlon?
Nothing.
Councillor Goff? Put that to a vote. All those in favour? Unanimously carried. Item number 5, presentations. Significant years of service. Councillors, we have had a number of staff who recently celebrated significant milestones in their years of service here at Manningham. I'd like to acknowledge the following council officers. 20 years of service. Lydia Winstanley, City Planning. Neshat Hamzarovsky, Community Venues and Functions. Mark McDonald, Community Venues and Functions. Raylene Kalakazis, Statutory Planning. Gabrielle O'Halloran, City Planning. Catherine Millick, Environmental Health. 30 years of service. Jenny Boyd, Arts and Tutor. 35 years of service. Rick Bombardieri, Parks. Zahida Masari, City Compliance. Raymond Cardwell, Parks. Stephen Black, Parks. And 40 years of service, Stephen Montefiore, Fleet, and Peter Carlos, also Fleet. I'd like to thank all staff for their contribution, their dedication and hard work during their time at council, and congratulations on your outstanding efforts. Thank you, councillors. Storwell gift winner. Isn't this wonderful? Harrison Kerr. I'd like to acknowledge and congratulate Manningham's very own engineering cadet officer, Harrison Kerr, who recently won the prestigious Power Corps Storwell gift. The Storwell gift is Australia's oldest and richest short-distance running race, held as the main event in an annual carnival held on Easter weekend at the Storwell Athletic Club in Victoria's Grampian Mountains district of Western Victoria. Harrison's winning time of 11.845 seconds off 9.25 metres was the fastest winning time since 1995, We congratulate Harrison on such an achievement, and I have to say it's pretty amazing that the CEO at the time was watching the race and then found out our very own staff won it. So that was quite nice, wasn't it? There you go. So congratulations once again. We love... Thank you. Thank you all. Item number 6, petitions. Joint letter, reinstate the funding of neighbourhood houses in Manningham. Do I have a mover?
Madam Mayor, I move that the joint letter with 414 signatories, both online and in person, requesting funding be reinstated to the neighbourhood houses in Manningham be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Moved by Councillor De Monte. Do I have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I second the motion.
Councillor Lang. Councillor De Monte?
Just very briefly, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to state that I and the other councillors appreciated the joint meeting with the neighbourhood houses and Manningham Learns a few weeks back. It was great to get the insight to their operations, the diverse community they serve, and also the many calls on their funding streams. And so I'm happy to table this joint letter and forward it to the officers for review and action.
Many thanks. Councillor Lang?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also, like Councillor De Monte, enjoyed the presentation from all the neighbourhood houses and very much enjoyed the fact that we were able to understand the points of difference for each neighbourhood house and the hard work that our neighbourhood houses do for our community. So it was a really informative and really united meeting. So it was very well appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you. Item number 7, public question time. We have received a question for tonight's meeting. At this time, anyone submitting a question to Council will have the opportunity to read out their question, or you can choose to have your question read out by our CEO. Our question tonight is from Vincent Tester. Thank you, Mr. Tester. Mr. Tester is now going to the mic.
Good evening, everybody. CEO, Mayor, Councillors. Tonight I'm here on behalf of Mr. Harris as he's unable to come. He's got caught up in Queensland having fun, so I guess we can't blame him. He's written a letter which a copy will be distributed to you by the lovely governance lady here, and if I may read it out, please. Dear Manningham City Council and Councillors, the 28th of February 2022 was a momentous day for the Hillcroft Drive removal group because after approximately 4 years of dialogue, Melbourne Water has finally acknowledged that they made an error in the application of the SBO to many properties. The Hillcroft Drive SBO removal group would appreciate that Manningham City Council councillors accept the formal request made by Melbourne Water to remove the SBO1 from substantial number of properties as proposed in their letter dated the 28th of February 2022, and an extract of the copy here. The Hillcroft Drive group removal group would like to thank the current and past councillors for their support, which has resulted in this significant occasion, which I think it is. Now, to the question. I would thank past and present councillors to their assistance in the removal of the SBO from a number of properties in Hillcroft Drive that would not have had an SBO applied. My question is, how long will it take for the process to be completed and finalised with all the property owners with an SBO removed, formally informed of removal?
Thank you, Mr. Tester. I'll ask Ms. Lee Robson, Acting Director of City Planning and Community, to respond.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Tester and Mr. Harris, for your questions. You'll note there's an item on Council's agenda this evening regarding that very item. So there are a number of statutory processes that must be followed in administering Amendment C137 before Council can adopt the amendment and seek ministerial approval. We estimate that the entire planning scheme amendment process will require 6 months to complete. Council and Melbourne Water are committed to progress the process in a timely manner, and we note that the final approval and gazettal of the amendment is undertaken by the Planning Minister's Office. Given it's going to take around 6 months, we may run up against the caretaker period for the state government election. We certainly hope that we'll be able to progress it prior to that. However, if we do run into the caretaker period where you're aware no other decisions can be made by the Minister during that time, it's a period of a couple of weeks, and certainly it wouldn't be long after that before we're able to resolve it. We're working hard to progress that as quickly as we can. Officers will continue to keep property owners affected by Amendment C137 informed at all key stages of the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 8, admission of urgent business, and there are no items of urgent business. Item number 9, planning permit applications. There are no planning applications. Item number 10, city planning and community. Item 10.1, Manningham flood mapping project update. Do I have a mover? Councillor Conlon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that the officer's recommendation be adopted with the following amendments, and that is point C be amended to read, endorse the revised terms of reference for the Manningham flood mapping project as circulated at this meeting and included in the minutes in these minutes at attachment 2, and also point D amended to read, appoint Councillor Stephen Mayne and Councillor Jeff Goff as representatives on the community reference panel.
Many thanks. Do I have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to second the motion.
Councillor Lang. Councillor Conlon.
Thank you very much. Well, what a long process to get to here. I think one of my first council meetings in 2016, the end of 2016, after being elected, for my first time, was a fiery council meeting, if I remember. And the reason it was fiery was because all these people had been landed with SBO's notifications, flood overlay notifications, and the community was in uproar. So after, I guess what I'm proud of is that we as an organisation and councillors have learned our lesson in terms of community engagement, and that's what this motion is about. It's about engaging the community before we go on another path of the necessary flood modelling that we need to do, which is critical for not just our drainage management, but it's also critical for appropriate planning controls, and that's what the uproar was about. And it's interesting that we have Mr Tester here. I think the first time I met Mr Tester was at one of the consultation meetings we had, which was after the fact of issuing the SBO overlays, and so that was another fiery meeting, and not with Mr Tester in particular, but just with the community. What impressed me about that meeting, which was held upstairs here, and I think would have to be one of the records in terms of community engagement, like in terms of the number of people who were there that night, and it was chaired by a consultant, I think, from memory, was the amount of expertise within the community who spoke to that, spoke to the issue, and yeah, including some very learned people who had direct experience in flood mapping themselves as a career. I think it was at that meeting that I probably thought to myself, maybe there's more to this, and that definitely influenced my my approach in terms of going forward from there, in terms of the decisions we made consequently on that particular project, on that flood mapping project. And what I guess what I'm hoping is that from this, if we pass this, councillors, is that the community reference panel will attract some more high calibre people with that knowledge to help inform the process of the new flood mapping project. A lot's changed in the last 5 or 6 years, including a recognition that I guess technology's come a long way, and the new LiDAR gathering system will be carefully used, perhaps more carefully, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to really show the community that we are serious about community engagement, and it's not just a word that we use because we have to under the Local Government Act. It's actually something that we're serious about. So I encourage councillors to support this motion in full, and it also refers to the 10.2, which will be considering the amendment to proposed Hillcroft Drive.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also want to support my fellow councillor Conlon on this motion. The motion sort of has the two aspects to it. It has the flood mapping aspect, and then it also has the Manningham integrated water management strategy aspect. And with the, as Councillor Conlon mentioned, with the new technologies, there are well-designed and contemporary flood mapping tools that can be used to predict the likelihood and the impact of floods with sufficient and more accurate readings. And it will be this flood mapping tool that we will be applying to Manningham so that we can actually update the modelling that we have for our stormwater runoffs and the travels within our catchments. This software is able to predict overland flows, depths, velocities, and also look at our ever-changing weather patterns, where we are experiencing the more heavy rainfall forecasts, and because of that, there is more risk for council and more risk for our community and their properties of flooding. And I think as Councillor Conlon said, the really innovative but also integral part, which shows Manningham's commitment to our community on this issue, is the fact that we're opening up a community reference panel to stay with the course of this Manningham integrated water management strategy, which is predicted to be a 4-year process. And the community reference panel will provide us with, the perspective of landholders or land occupiers or people that have experienced flooding, so that we can be really well informed about the key factors that influence our community when looking at flood mapping. So I just really want to acknowledge the work that's gone behind this motion to look at new technology to incorporate the flood mapping, but then to use that new technology to look at our Manningham water management strategy. Also adding to that, though, that we are looking at not having water management, it states clearly in the report, as just water disposal, but looking for opportunities to have our stormwater and our water sources used effectively on the land. So for climate change purposes as well. So really to keep the water where it's meant to be in the land. So I'd just like to bring out those facts so that my fellow councillors can support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Put that to a motion. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 10.2, Melbourne Water request for Section 22, amendment to amend flooding overlay Schedule 1 to the special building overlay for properties in and around Hillcroft Drive, Templestowe. Do I have a mover?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Goff. Seconder? Councillor Conlon. Councillor Goff?
Thank you very much. I really do like to move this particular motion, and it's very timely. Interesting that the motion gets in here, so Manningham at the start is doing whatever it can as quickly as possible, because I think we got the message about the other one. Was it the last meeting, before the last meeting, or after the last meeting? And it's up here, getting through council, if it is passed tonight, within those 4 weeks. So massive effort on that to come up as a report. Look, I'm not going to go into the history of this. Of you people that have been around here, you've lived through it. For the people that haven't, you've heard about it. And for the people that are in the community, they've had to go through something that is very difficult, and that is to fight against bureaucracy and government. And it is with tenacity and vigour and dedication that the obvious was proved to Melbourne Water, that A, water doesn't flow uphill, and B, if it's that wide, it isn't going to be over a metre tall flowing through the street. And it was ridiculous. And those mis-errors really are things that cause great concern for our community, especially when they have to fight so hard to be heard. They have to fight so hard to stand up for what is their right. And we talk about community consultation, but some things are so obvious and they can't be put through. I'm very glad that this has come through, and this motion really is about expediting that, taking off the SBO allocation to those properties along the road. And I think some of them it's not a complete take-off, it's a partial one, to be done as quickly as possible for the community. Once it got to the Minister and the state government departments, it's a very difficult exercise. And the ability to do that, I think some of these people should start a consultancy in dealing with Melbourne Water, because they seem to be able to get results where other people really fail to measure up against Melbourne Water. They're a very difficult group of people to be tackling. And I think this is a moment of proof that the community, even though they had to fight to a level that was wrong for governments, including us, to make people go through, but to get to that stage for this, it is a celebration, and I commend this motion that we need to pass and expedite this process in the interests of fairness and justice for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Conlon.
Thank you. And yeah, it is a humbling moment to admit when we've made a mistake, and obviously this is the result of a significant error in the process, and it is definitely worth a shout out to the Hillcroft Drive SBO removal group, which was formed specifically to right the error, I guess. It's and despite multiple pushbacks, probably they persisted, as Councillor Goff mentioned, with tenacity, and I think it's very appropriate that we whether we pass this tonight, and that we, unfortunately, in another 6 months potentially, as we've heard, to actually get that formally removed, but to actually go one step closer to that happening. It is worth mentioning, though, that the independent panel did take on the comments from the Hillcroft Drive SBO removal group, and I think that was significant in terms of validating the argument. So I do appreciate the community's involvement in this, particularly Mr. Harris and Mr. Tester, and for not giving up. So I commend this to the councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Any speakers against? Any other speakers? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Yes, I'd just like to reiterate the comments of Councillor Goff and Councillor Conlon, who obviously lived the greater majority of this 6-year issue. Obviously, Mr Harris and Mr Tester are in Ruffy Ward, and I've come to this quite late, but I certainly concur with the comments that they've been incredibly tenacious, and it is very unusual for a residents group to prevail like this. I hope it can be expedited as quickly as possible, and I do think that for the credibility of the broader review, which we've authorised in the previous motion, it was important to sort this issue first because the credibility, there was a question mark over it. So for government bureaucracy to admit that you're wrong is important when it happens, and we do, as Councillor Lang said, have better data and a really significant commitment to community consultation to ensure that as we now return to the original very important process of accurate flood mapping in a time of climate change, in light of what we see in Lismore and Queensland, and authorities have got to get it right. It's got to be factual, it's got to be credible, and the consultation has to be sincere and thorough. So I think that where we land tonight is a good jumping off point to fix historical issues and to move on to the broader process that will take, as Carly Lang mentioned, another 4 years.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Any other speakers? Councillor Chin.
It has been quite a journey, a long journey since just like Councillor Coleman mentioned, that since we were elected in 2016, and then the flood mapping came to council for decision, and there is a big public gathering upstairs, and I still quite vividly remember what's going on at that time. And I have to say that I'm deeply humbled and impressed by the residents who believe what they believe in, and they fight the big fight against the very big organization. And of course, both parties believe that they are at the right side. But residents, to your credit, to Mr. Tester and Mr. Harris's credit, you present evidence, the data, and at the end it convinced the organizations just to make the amendment. So everything can happen. So I also encourage all residents, if you think that there's something that is not quite right, always bring in and with evidence and good data, and at the end you will win the fight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Let's put that to a vote. Those in favour? That is unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 11, City Services. 11.1, Introduction to Food Organics, Garden Organics FOGO service. Do I have a mover?
I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted.
Councillor Lightbody, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I second the motion.
Councillor Lang. Councillor Lightbody.
Yep. I'm really excited that we're beginning the final lead up to the rollout of this service. It's one of the questions I get asked most, including on the weekend down at Tunstall Square Market. And while I wish we could switch it on tomorrow, I do understand that we need to make sure that everyone understands it first. And that's why we've got a long lead time leading up to the implementation date, so that our communications and educational information is right. It's also important to note that while this is the right thing to do for waste management and the circular economy, it's also mandated by the state government for all councils across Victoria, as will the eventual move to a glass bin. And this is working towards reaching waste reduction targets that are also implemented by the state onto all councils. This new program will mean most household waste will now either be recycled via the yellow bin, or in the case of food and organics, via the green bin. This goes to reducing our landfill and reducing the emissions that result from landfill as well. I'm really excited to be catching up with our neighbouring councils and confident that this is the right implementation strategy, as our officers have observed and learnt from LGA's implementations across Melbourne. And I'm confident that we're doing everything right to make it as easy as possible, including supplying of kitchen caddies and what's estimated to be about a year's worth of biodegradable bags for the food waste to our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Lightbody. I just had a few extra things to add. I just wanted to go through that Manningham, a bit of history of Manningham's waste collection service has actually remained largely unchanged over the last 20 years, and this is a substantial change to how Manningham residents will be operating in terms of their waste management. And I just want to acknowledge that I am really excited about this initiative. I have already got my caddy bin ready, but I'm also want to be honest that I'm also a little bit worried. And I know that community have spoken to me that they're a little bit worried too about switching their garbage and recyclables to fortnightly. And as much as research does show that this does then bring the advantages of diverting our landfill between 40 and 80%, and it is how the rollout of FOGO is most effective for our community and our council, I just want to acknowledge that it is also going to mean a change. It is going to mean a behavioural change in the ways in which we manage and operate our waste. And that is going to be easier for some and hard for others. So I think even though I am with my fellow councillor that it would be lovely to have these initiatives rolled out tomorrow, there needs to be the time so that we can process the information in front of us. We have our garbage bin, we have our green food waste and garden waste bin, and we have our caddies with our yearly supply of 150 compostable liners, and that we have the education and the communication that goes with it so that we have the year to think about our processes, to get our heads around the change so that the program is a success in the long run, and it is a success for not just our land but for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Ooh. Councillor Monty, just by
Thank
here.
you, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, just on what Councillor Lang said, I do think it's important as well to speak to the fact that the general waste bin will move to that fortnightly collection. And I think it's important to say I've got 3 children, a family of 5, and I haven't been using the caddy, but I have been using a worm farm for organics, and I'm actually astonished at how much my general waste actually has reduced. And I noticed in the report the figures have been tracking over the last sort of 4 years that 50% of general waste is actually foodstuffs, which is really interesting. I actually found that fascinating. But I've done it. For the last few months, even over Christmas, my general waste bin has only been half filled, and it's a really lovely feeling, albeit I am taking my soft plastics to Coles and recycling as well. But it's going to be a big change, and I echo what Councillor Lang said. We've got time to progress the change, but I really do believe that it's doable, and there's always backups. I mean, I've had 3 kids in nappies, and I understand the huge amount of waste that generates. So there are backup plans, so people can be catered for at whatever stage they're at their life. I think it's a great initiative. Council officers have done a great job. So, yeah, well done to all.
Thank you, Councillor Del Monte. I can concur, though I don't have a worm farm. I have compost.
You can get one at half price, Madam Mayor.
I've got compost. I've got 2 compost bins. Councillor Romain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am so excited for FOGO to roll out in Manningham. I think the community will really get behind it. Talking to friends from other municipalities, I think it's been really well received, and it's a great strategy to get people actively thinking about their rubbish. I can say that since our briefings, I already feel so wasteful throwing any of my food scraps into the bin, knowing they're just going to end up in landfill. Though it's been taking a longer process than I would wish, similar to Councillor Lightbody, I think it is really important that we do this right, and I know that we have learned from other municipalities who've gone before us For those listening, you can put all food waste into FOGO, including fruit, veggies, meat, fish, bones, dairy products, eggshells, bread, pasta, and much more. For all community worried, I can assure you you're going to get a very clear list and a very thorough understanding of how this works through our strong comms program. And I'd just like to thank the officers for their work, especially Linda and her enthusiasm. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Any other speakers for?
I have a question.
You have a question?
Madam Mayor, through you, I have a question for officers. And I have to admit, FOGO services is perfect, it's wonderful. It has to be.
Your question, Councillor?
Yeah, and the question is, most of the outcries is not about FOGO, it's about why we change the red bin collection from weekly to fortnightly. It probably there is a cost involved, a budget impact, or I think that is about the time we address it and explain it to the community.
So what's your question?
The question is why we couldn't keep the red bin to be cleared on a weekly basis rather than fortnightly. And I think the most outcry was about the reason why.
So the question is why fortnightly?
Yes, not weekly.
I'll refer that to Rochelle. That's Director of City Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Chen. And answering your question, it's probably around behaviour change. So it's actually encouraging people to use their green waste bin, and that's why we're looking to change the frequency of the general rubbish collection. So it's not just in relation to costs, Councillor, it's actually more around us wanting to change the behaviour of our residents and actually more educated process around that to implement the change.
Thank you. I nearly said Councillor. Thank you, Rochelle Quadrocki, Director. Oh, it's not Quadrocki. Quadrocki, yes, sorry. Director of City Services. Did you want to speak for the motion, Councillor?
No, I'm fine.
You're fine?
Yeah,
Just want to clarify. Yep, no problem. Speaking for the motion, Councillor Conlon.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is a great opportunity, particularly for the people near the end of last term of this council. We actually had to change the green waste for people in large properties in Manningham. And part of that solution was actually to encourage people to get 2 green waste bins, which were collected fortnightly, to manage their green waste. So this is a great outcome for those people in terms of managing your green waste and not having, that. And part of the justification for that was closing, because we had to close basically the green waste depot down at Paddle. So it is a great outcome, and I encourage councillors to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Any other further councillors? Councillor Stephen Main.
Yes, I mean, I was also a little nervous initially about the reduction after 20 years of similar policy to move from weekly to fortnightly. But I think it does need to be stressed that we're actually increasing the frequency of the green bin. So that's going from fortnightly to weekly. So net, there isn't actually a reduction, it's just a change in the mix. And the report is very, very clear about the achievement on behavioural change and reduction in diversion to waste fill, as explained by Councillor Diamonte. So my initial, on reading the headline, I was nervous. On reading the report, I was convinced. We've gone to school on other councils, particularly Burundara, and for mine, the data is in, and this is an excellent recommendation, and I too would like to commend the officers. We've got all the big decisions right on waste over a long period of time, whether it's bin colour, offering green bins very early. Many councils don't have it. So I think this is a continuation of great data and considered decision making, and we'll have great environmental outcomes as well. So bring it on.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Any further speakers to the motion? I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? That is unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. 11.2, VECO expansion roll-in of further electricity accounts. Do I have a mover? Councillor Goff. So moved. Sorry. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Conlon. Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I rise to move this particular motion in that, well, as it promises, there are some savings in all of this over the years, and we've got a big reduction on the CO2. But if I can just ask a question, Madam Mayor. The report says VECO. I don't know what the O stands for because it's Victorian Energy Collaboration what?
So,
That's the O.
Mr. CEO, hang on, let me get the...
I could assume organisation.
My understanding is it's organisation, but we will check that fact for you, Councillor. Thank you for
One
picking that
moment.
up.
This is not in the report.
It's not in the report, yes. But it doesn't matter. That's okay. It's just a VECO. We've got an explanation which is good in the first sentence.
It's organisation, thank you, councillor. That's
Okay. And anyway, basically what this is, for people that don't know that, it's the amalgamation of a whole lot of local governments, local councils that have got together to see if they can put a better deal together on energy, using some green energy and other sorts of energy mixes, but getting energy to purchasing it on a bulk basis rather than an individual council basis. Now, in the past, we were very good at green energy for our street lights, and we've done great movements in Manningham over the years on street lighting, going from basically I don't know what the technology was, to LED. Mercury vapour to LED. And that made substantial changes. In fact, we went into debt to actually do that, and because it paid back within a few years. It was only 3 or 4 years, and it started to pay back to us with the amount of money we were spending on electricity. And that was green. But for the other things in Manningham, it wasn't, and we weren't able to, I suppose, get the prices good enough for our community to be able to do this. Now, these particular, what we've gone out with now and coming back now, are prices that are less than what we were paying. And so there isn't an extra that's coming into this scenario. And we have the ability to include not just our major sites, but a whole lot of other smaller sites and put them into the one basket. Unfortunately, we've got to move this motion, or fortunately, we've got to move a motion. And essentially this motion, councillors, is all about empowering the CEO to spend our money for us. So it actually delegates the ability to go over a certain limit that we've set, and he can go into the negotiations to further this particular contract and deal. So, and I think the important element here is we're going to be covering more of our building, in fact all of them, and getting those smaller buildings put into that contract, because prior to that it was only the really big buildings and our street lights that were in it. So this is going to be able to create extra savings in money, but also, more importantly, for the CO2 and the environment. So I hope you support the motion.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Conlon.
Thank you. Yes, it's we had the privilege last year, councillors, of approving our involvement with the VECO contract, and it's significant because it's basically making the most of our hydro electricity scheme as well as new wind farms. It's our partner in the contract is with Red Energy, a federal government-owned entity, which is fantastic. So it gives us the certainty that we're not getting ripped off, and it's a pretty obvious decision, really, when it comes down to it. The numbers all stack up. It's the only way we're going to meet our targets, actually, for 2028 net zero for the council emissions. And it points, to me, the most significant part of this VECO deal is it points to action that we can potentially initiate on behalf of the community in getting everyone else involved in renewable energy. And that's later on in 11.3, you'll see in the Climate Action Plan. One of those items is to do something similar for businesses and the community to enable people to make that choice of of renewable energy and, in our case, cheaper energy. So I know the amount sounds like a lot, $5 million, but we spend a lot of, that's over 9 years, and we spend a lot of money on electricity, obviously, and with going into electric cars, no doubt, we'll be spending a lot more. So I thank the officers for doing the work in terms of bringing this to us and, yeah, expanding our contract. It's good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments about the whole remarkable situation here. So I think it was the Turnbull government that decided to spend, I think, $5 billion buying Victoria and New South Wales out of their stake in Snowy Hydro. So the feds went from 13% of Snowy Hydro to 100%. And in spite of what you hear out of Canberra about the current government and, you know, pro-coal and anti-climate reform, or not being genuine about it, you know, this is the federal government through Snowy Hydros spending $900 million building renewable facilities, primarily wind, in regional Victoria, and then teaming up with Darebin Council. You know, would you believe it? The comrades at Darebin, who led the way and got, I think, close to 40 councils involved in this marvellous group buying exercise. And it's been so successful with the first of our larger buildings that have gone in there that we're giving the CEO carte blanche to spend many millions, over $5 million on the delegation, in terms of the value of a contract over a long-term period. And if you look at the corollary of this, you've got poor old AGL, owner of Loy Yang A, the biggest coal-belching power station in Victoria, profits crashing, share price crashing because no one's buying their power. And it's because of deals like this, where we have had government intervention federally to back the investment in renewables, and then other levels of government getting together and doing scaled buying, which is great for the climate. So it's a fascinating story. You know, Darebin drove it. It wasn't through the usual MAV or Procurement Australia. These are the two usual bulk buy organisations that the sector uses. I just haven't seen anything as innovative as this in a long time. And I remember Councillor Conlon as mayor at the time being really energised after going to the launch at the RACV Club with a whole bunch of really excited councils. And it's saving us money and helping the environment. So it's just a great policy outcome at so many levels. So I hope the CEO does commit us to spending many millions of this on this and delivering material savings whilst greening up our energy purchasing.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Any other speakers? I will put it to a motion, to a vote. I'll put it to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 11.3, Climate Emergency Action Plan for Public Consultation. Mover, Councillor Chen.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mayne. Councillor Chen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The draft Climate Emergency Action Plan tabled tonight for public consultation flows from the Climate Emergency Declaration endorsed by Council back in January 2020. The declaration empowers Council to further accelerate efforts and incorporate climate change considerations in all future strategies, decisions, and actions shaping our city's future. Following the declaration of climate emergency in October last year, and the Council adopted inspiring new target. And the target were net zero emission by 2028 for council operations and net zero emissions by 2035 for the Manningham community. Along with the net zero targets, Council also endorsed 3 principles to guide decisions making on actions and their implementations. The 3 principles are: actions are to be based on best value and be economically prudent, environmentally viable, and technically proven, which is really important. And then we will have annual reporting on actions and progress towards targets. But we also mindful that we combine future councils. So future council can aim to affirm or adjust the ongoing program of climate actions within the first 12 months of their election term. And the passing of these emotions are very crucial because they spearheaded the Climate Emergency Action Plan, which will include actions we will take to respond to climate emergency and the additional support we will provide to our community. Of course, there will be costs involved, but there will also be benefit for council and the community. Where necessary financial commitment to funding actions will be decided annually through council budget process. The proposed first few new steps towards the net zero targets include expansion of the Victorian Energy Collaboration Contract to switch more councils' electricity accounts across the emission-free wind-powered electricity. And also there will be budget submission to switch, as Councillor Collin just mentioned, to switch main roads street lights to LEDs. Also submissions about climate change action, community engagement, and development of community solar and public electric vehicles charger initiatives. There will also be initiatives to improve the resilience of the natural environment to climate change. We recognize that the climate change is a defining issue of our time and requires a collaborative and urgent response. By actively working together, councils, schools, business, and their partners, we have the opportunity to create a more sustainable future for all our community. Attached to the agenda is a draft of the Climate Emergency Action Plan with a range of actions. The action plan is a comprehensive response to the climate emergency that Council acknowledged in the 2020 resolution here tonight, tabled for public consultation. So I asked Councillors' support to that plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor Romain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This action plan proves that Manningham is taking climate change and its impacts seriously, as begun by our declaration of climate emergency back in 2020. Although we are a smaller level of government, it is important that we do as much as we can, and being closest to community is important. We can have the most localised impact. As Councillor Chen has stipulated, we have two targets: to get zero emissions for council by 2028 and 2035 for the community. Community will be the bigger challenge, but council is committed to looking to assist community in every way we can, whether this be awareness, education, assisting, guiding access, encouraging behavioural changes, and the list goes on. I think it's worth noting that we did bring in EY, a Big Four firm that does to gather substantial research to back our priorities and proving how seriously we are taking this issue. Overall, I just really encourage our community to engage in the public consultation that will be following this motion. We want to know what you want us to do, we want to know how we can best assist you, and we do urge our community to act, because overall we really want to meet our net zero emission targets, which is going to be a whole community-wide effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? Any other speakers? Ooh. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be short because my fellow councillors have explained the climate action plan in detail. Mine is more about the fact that I actually really look forward to hearing from the community about the innovative ways in which we can reduce our human impact on our natural environment and make positive and realistic changes to our human behaviour to be able to protect our environment for our future generations. I really encourage I really encourage everybody, I can encourage the community to take the time to read through the Climate Change Action Plan and for it to create community discussions so that people can generate ideas, come together, put in input, so we can really strengthen our livability, our health and well-being, and build resilience in our human practices so that our environment and our built environments are protected for our future and our generations' future.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lightbody.
I'll also keep it short, and I think I'm really excited by this policy. It's been one of my key focuses since being elected, has been climate change action. and have had a massive interest in the development of this plan. We've had lots of briefings on it, both by our amazing officers and also by the consultants at Ernst & Young. And a lot of the research done by them has helped lead to the actions that we have in the draft today. And I'd like to highlight a couple of those actions. I won't highlight all of them because I don't think I have enough time to read out the whole report. Some key ones include increasing access to public charging stations, and I think that's really important because as council we own many of the main car parks within the city, and it's our responsibility to adapt them to the changing vehicle type. And many people, and in particular those who live in apartment buildings, will likely not have adequate access to charging within their buildings, as they were simply not designed that way, and that's probably a failure on the state's planning system. But I won't get into the state's planning system failures either tonight. We also included things like implementing environmental upgrade finance systems, which is used by a number of councils in collaboration with the state to help businesses and potentially also now residents install things such as solar or more energy efficient appliances. Embedding the circular economy into our city, which will help grow some local businesses and reducing waste, and that's also including FOGA, which we spoke about earlier. And also a big thing in this report is collaboration, and that's working with other councils and other groups through programs such as the Cities Powers Partnership, so that we can use the knowledge and experience elsewhere along the way, so that we're not having to do all the work from scratch every time on every project. And I think that'll not only help us, but what we do will also help other councils in the implementation of their strategies. And I guess these are just some of the actions that will help the community reach net zero, but there are also equally as many actions that council will take in reducing our own emissions to net zero by 2028, a bit before our community target. But I probably won't have time to read out all of those either. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Any other speakers? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
I'd like to start with a question, if that's okay, Mayor. Just to the CEO, are we able to make the Ernst & Young report advising on our climate action plan public?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Stephen Mayne. The advice is that yes, we can. We've just got a couple of details we've got to finalise with EY to make sure that any personal details are removed from the report, and then we'll be able to publish it.
Thank you. Would you like to join in the debate now, Councillor?
Yes. Thanks, Mayor.
Speaking for?
Speaking for.
Thank you.
So I think I just support what everyone else is saying. I mean, this is the fourth item tonight dealing with climate issues, from FOGO to flood mapping to the VECO and now this. So it's a very big theme tonight, and it's obviously a very important issue. We have declared an emergency, and we're backing it up with consistent policy decisions. I look forward to seeing the public release of the EY report, because it was a great piece of work with enormous detail, and I think that the public's access to that will be able to better inform any potential submissions or advice that the community gives to council on specific steps. And I just signal a couple of things. I think that the public charging is an area, as Councillor Lightbody mentioned, where we will need to step up. We haven't provided any as yet, and this will involve spending money. So I think we're going to need to be consistent and sincere with spending money to deliver on a significant action plan. And the other one I'd signal is on solar on roofs, in that we're under the average across Australia, and whether we consider eventually using our tax system rates to provide incentives, or whether it's grants. But solar, as the EY report mentions, and obviously as in the action plan, solar it delivers massive benefits at the climate environmental level. And if our community is underdone on solar on roofs, then we need to roll up our sleeves and actually catch up to the national average. So I think it's a really good report, and we will get a chance to make any sort of final tweaks when the final report comes back after consultation. And I just urge the community to get into the detail, because it is a very complex area. But we need to make a raft of big decisions, and this is an important part of the process to get that going by releasing this draft action plan and asking the community for consultation over the next couple of months.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? Let's put that to a vote. Those in favour? It's unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. 11.4 Jumping Creek Design Proposal. A mover.
Madam Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Councillor Lang. Seconder, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I premise that I may take more than my time. Jumping Creek Road in Wonga Park is one of Manningham's major road improvement projects. Jumping Creek Road has a history of near misses as well as minor and major accidents, leading to council improving the safety for all users, that is motorists, cyclists and pedestrians. Manningham City Council is the local road authority under the Road Management Act and is responsible for the management, maintenance and development of our local road network within Manningham, the Manningham area. Jumping Creek Road is an important local link that carries an excess of 8,100 vehicles per day, with the volume expected to nearly double to 15,000 vehicles per day by 2035. The road provides a 5-kilometre link between Ringwood Warrandyte Road in Warrandyte to Homestead Road in Wonga Park, as well as linking surrounding suburbs and tourist destinations of our Yarra Valley and the Dandenong Ranges. The deteriorating state of the road, including the traffic volumes, poor pedestrian and cyclist accessibility, and the sustained crashes on Jumping Creek Road highlight the need for the upgrade. In 2013, the Council identified the need for ongoing consultation. Therefore, a community reference panel was established with members of the community, ward councillors of the time, of the past and present, and project officers to guide the design and the delivery. Consultation has continued with the wider community as well, including their submissions and thoughts on the proposed draft plan. In 2022, the further information information sessions were offered, and in March 2022, residents could wish to discuss with officers in detail any of the proposals or the designs or alternatives. The purpose of the Jumping Creek Road project is to improve the safety for motorists, cyclists and pedestrians. And the site does have significant challenges that go with it. For example, the site's topography, the safety of users, the obstacles along the roadside, including vegetation and power poles. It is a significant wildlife corridor, its lack of drainage, and the condition of its asset, as well as traffic movements and speeding traffic. In deciding the proposed design for the Jumping Creek Road, all of these aspects needed to be put into perspective. The safety, as well as the topography, as well as maintaining the look of the area, as well as looking after pedestrians, motorists and cyclists, and protecting the flora and fauna, all must be considered when the design was put through. Therefore, tonight's proposal looks at the civil works that are needed to be able to upgrade the road with the installation of underground drainage, roundabouts at Hooper and Hartley Roads, and the signalisation of the intersection of Dudley Road and Jumping Creek Road on a raised platform. The preferred township design that you are seeing in the report tonight has had community differing views, and it has raised many questions. It has raised questions about road safety, environment, and moving around sustainable transport, so being able to move around on foot, on bike, and to access the public transport. What came out as the main concerns was wildlife protection, enhancing the vegetation, our footpath network, the Homestead Road intersection and the safety concerns there, and speeding along the road. All of these have been addressed and assessed when preparing the preferred option that you have in front of you tonight. I would ask my fellow councillors to support the great work that officers have done.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang.
Pardon? Yes, please.
Extension of time. Moved by Councillor Conlon.
Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Chen. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Councillor, you have an extension of 2 minutes.
Thank you. I told you. In particular, I would like to acknowledge that Christian, Officer Christian, for his hard work. He has taken on this project at a point where the community consultation was not great, and the I'm getting emotional because you've done such a good job. I'll stop for 2 seconds. And when the community reference panel were about to give up, and it was under Christian's leadership that he met with each one of them, and he's offered the community extensive consultation to bring them on the journey. When I came on this project, also thought the design was not right, and that I thought maybe another design was right, but it was under the expertise of Christian to be able to take me through the traffic modelling, to understand the flows and the safety and all of the impacts, to be able to come up with a solution that really does provide our community with the best outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Conlon, anything to add?
I'd actually like to just clarify a few things with officers prior.
So can I just clarify, you're asking a question?
Yes.
Yep, so,
Thank you.
so we're just stopping the debate, so you've got your question and then you have
I'll
time.
maybe roll the questions into one so they can get one response. So hopefully it's the same response. Specifically around the intersection of Jumping Creek Road, so through you, Mayor, to the Director of City Services. Yep. Jumping Creek Road and Yarra Road. It's my understanding that it's essentially still at a concept level, but the idea that it's going to be signalised at Dudley and not signalised at Yarra, and a raised platform, as Councillor Lang mentioned, is a firm part of that design. So my question is regarding other things that officers may consider in the detailed design, and that is to improve traffic flow turning right out of Yarra onto Jumping Creek. Is it possible to consider having a left-hand turn and a right-hand turn lane for 50 to 100 metres prior to the intersection, coming up, heading north on Yarra Road? Is it possible also to have a clear way or a keep clear for as long as possible before the lights heading east on Jumping Creek at the intersection of Dudley, to ensure that people turning right out of Yarra, the maximum number of people have the opportunity at light changes to turn right and sort of bank up there. Also, in terms of the intersection in terms of assisting pedestrians who might be travelling from Jumping Creek Road on the south side from the east side of Yarra Road to the west side, where there's a significant number of residents in that pocket there. The idea of having a traffic island in the middle of the road, as well as potentially at the left-hand turn, if we do have the 2 lanes. So, and making sure that there's plenty of I guess safety for the pedestrians in that movement.
So I'm hearing 3 questions actually from that. So through Mr. CEO to the Director of City Services, Rochelle Quattrockery, if you could address those questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Andrew Conlon, for your questions. And a lot of what you've mentioned has actually been included in the modelling that Councillor Lang spoke about. So there has been some detailed modelling undertaken that looks at those improvement works that you've spoken about and movement through that intersection to improve safety. And that will be picked up in the detailed design, so as we move through the project. But yes, that is a huge consideration as project. It's actually the purpose of the project to improve safety along that road and through that intersection, and that is something that we want to ensure that we spend the time on the design, ensure that we achieve those outcomes.
Thank you.
Okay, so you may now enter the debate.
Yes,
To speak
thank you.
for the motion, your time starts now.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you for that clarification, because it was important that I understood that to support this motion in principle. It's been a long journey, as I think I had the honour of being one of the first councillors on that reference panel that Councillor Lang spoke about. And I'd like to give a shout out to all the community members who have stood the course of 5-6 years, possibly more. I think it might have started before me, yes. For their good work and their patience, their patience, their tenacity, their patience through upheaval in terms of council, I guess, turnover of staff during the project. There was a significant turnover, and you know, that just happens. You know, people leave, people move on, and people come in. And I do thank the community members for their patience with that whole process. And it was a difficult changeover. And I have to agree with Councillor Lang in terms of the response from the officers. So we've had a new director, Rochelle, come in, a new project manager, Christian, and James also in part of that, all new to the whole thing, and they've done a sterling job of getting to this point of having a viable design that's supported in general by the community, and that is at a reasonable cost for this road. Even though it is one of the most significant, you know, road projects that we'll be doing for a while, it does a lot of that cost we would have spent anyway on maintaining that road, which isn't covered in the. It's not really talked about as an offset there, but I do think, as Councillor Lang mentioned, one of the great outcomes for those community members for the reference panel was the significant shift in recognising the wildlife and doing what we could to accommodate the wildlife crossing. I think that was one of those points of tension that I remember from the very start, and it wasn't. I don't think we were really committed to that solution until quite recently, relatively recently. On top of all that, we had COVID. That's right. We in the middle of all that, and Rochelle had started, I think, without even meeting any of her team for about 6 months. So, my hats off to the community panel members, and it's great. I think that was probably our first foray into the reference panel, sort of where, in terms of a proper consultation process. And gee, those guys have really stuck it out. Like I said, 5-6 years. And some of them really want to get off, and they've had enough. But hopefully after tonight, they'll be satisfied. I hope so. And again, to the team, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers? Put that to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. And thank you to all the staff. Concur with Councillor Lang. Thank you. 11.5 Asset Management Policy and Plan Upgrade. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
So moved.
You moving? Yes. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Goff. Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Thanks, Mayor. So this is a report updating our plan for our long-term asset management plan. It's a requirement of the new state legislation that we produce this report. It's a very interesting read. If you look at particularly the data at the back, I was fascinated to discover that we own 610 kilometres of roads, 1,025 kilometres of drains, and 880 kilometres of paths. At the replacement value, it's 1.48 billion of built assets, written down value 848 million. And it goes through each asset class talking about our 10-year plans in terms of a new investment, renewal, maintenance, a summary of the quality of the 230 buildings that are in there. So it's a really good, thorough, transparent status report on all our assets. It doesn't mention in the mix our $1.3 billion of land on top of that. So that's how you get to the final $2.2 billion on our balance sheet. But it's a really thorough document looking at all of our diverse assets. And I'd like to thank the officers. It must have been incredibly time-consuming putting this together, and it gives the councillors a really good window into where the capital should be allocated, whether it's footpaths or drains, those sort of things. So we can keep coming back to this document and looking at the status reports and deciding whether to tweak the 10-year capital allocation. So well done to Rochelle Kotrocki and all her team for producing this report. It's a very valuable document and it will guide councillors for many years.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Councillor Goff.
Just quickly, Madam Mayor, I just want to say that this is part of the process. So it's going out for public consultation now, and we've got the timeline till June. So it's a quick consultation coming back, and just a quick question halfway through my speech. You can take my time.
Question?
Yeah. Is this
So
the
I'll
last
pause.
of those? No, don't pause. Is this the last of those policies that we've got to get done with the Local Government Act, or are there others still to go?
Take that.
Thank you. I'm going to take that on notice. We're pretty close, I think, Councillor. Yeah.
Because, yes, the Act did prescribe that we had to renew, according to their outlines and templates, all of our policies. So we must be getting close to the end of it. No, I support the motion.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Goff. Any speakers against the motion? No. Any other speakers? Put that to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. Got item 12, experience and capability. 12.1, gender equity action plan 2022-2025. Do I have a mover?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Councillor De Monte. Seconder, Councillor Laura Main. Councillor De Monte, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of yourself, I spoke at International Women's Day earlier this year with the theme of Break the Bias. At that event, I said I longed for the day when we didn't need an International Women's Day, and when we reached true gender equality, not just through our spoken words, but through our unconscious actions and our unconscious thoughts, really addressing our unconscious bias. And I share the same sentiments with the Gender Equality Action Plan. However, gender equality is a complex problem. We can't take our eye off it, and I firmly believe that it's going to be another generation before we reach gender equality. So that means plans like this are really important because it brings gender equality into our conscious day-to-day thoughts. So this plan, which has been submitted to the Commission for Gender Equality and will be made publicly available on Council's website, it focuses on gender equality within Council's workforce and workplace. So it's not a wider community strategy, but it actually does focus on a lot of what we do that's community facing, our projects, and looks at that through a gender equality lens. It requires us to progress gender equality through workforce decision, workforce planning, our leadership, as I said, our projects, and our strategies, and including our council plan. It includes strategies and actions and measures to keep us accountable. And it is actually a requirement under the Victorian's Gender Equality Act 2020. I want to finish by emphasising that gender equality is not about one group versus another. It's not about one gender versus another. Quite simply, it's about recognising gender equality as a fundamental right. So I congratulate the officers. They've done a huge amount of work, not just in this plan, but in all the background data and all the research to pull together the plan and the actions. And I encourage this plan to be adopted. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Laura Main.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. After 12 months of work, the Jeep is finally here, with big thanks to expert consultants GenderWorks Australia. Some of the action that was taken to get this plan together include a capability review, workplace gender audit analysis, and then consulting with several groups, such as executive, working groups, employees, staff committees, and councillors. Some of the focus areas of this plan include looking at the overarching impact, workforce composition, the composition of governing bodies, equal remuneration, sexual harassment, recruitment and promotion, leave and flexibility, and the segregation of the workforce. I'd like to acknowledge that Council does do a lot of does work in gender equality in other areas. We celebrated International Women's Day earlier this year, as Councillor De Monte talked about, which I thought had a really great focus on intersectionality. We participated in as well as inclusivity across the board, such as participating in the Midsummer Parade, 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, establishing our gender equality committee, gender equality and LGBT committee, and more. This report notes that making this plan is not only a legislative requirement, but it's also to fulfil our moral obligation to take action, and Council acknowledges there's still so much more to be done. I'm really glad that gender equality across the board is being taken and being really considered in the local government sector. I love the impact of the gender equality assessment of all council policies as required by the Gender Equality Act, and I think this helps us consider this issue more holistically across the board. Overall, I'd like to thank the officers and Karen's team for this great work. My takeaway dealing with this issue in our organisation is that Council is really open and it has an enthusiastic approach backed by really great and inclusive values. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Let's put it to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 12.2, Advocacy Priorities 2022 Federal Election Campaign. Do I have a mover? Councillor Anna Chin.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you very much. And do I have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I second the motion.
Councillor Lang, Councillor Chin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Advocating to other levels of government in the interest of our community is an essential role of local government. Through our advocacy, we are the voice of our community, working to deliver infrastructure and policy in partnership with other levels of government to meet current and long-term community needs. With the federal election fast approaching, we can expect politicians and policy makers to mobilize opportunities for funding pledges and budget allocations. The Municipal Association of Victoria and the Australian Local Government Association have also aligned its advocacy campaign priority themes. Manningham is a member of those two organizations, and our officers have reviewed our current list of advocacy priorities and selected the ones that align to those campaign themes. 3 campaign themes were elected. They are the transport and community infrastructure. The second one is building resilience, and the third one is circular economy. Madam Mayor, local knows what locals need. So Manningham needs better public transport. So we are calling for funding to deliver the Doncaster busway as part of the network-wide bus rapid transit system. And the busway should be designed so it can transition to heavy rail. Manningham is a council member of both Metropolitan Transport Forum and Eastern Transport Coalition. Both organizations are strong advocates of transport issues. I'm very happy to share with our councillors and the community that Manningham plays an active role in those two organizations. For example, our transport team and the officer Daniele Ranieri, he leads the ETC Bus Network Review Networking Group and identify advocacy asks of government. And Manningham also wants upgrade of our roads. So we are calling for federal funding of $55 million for Templestowe Road duplications and $5 million towards improvements for 5-way intersection. And we just talked about the Jumping Creek road design proposal, which was just endorsed. And therefore, we are calling for 7 million for upgrade and improvements to Jumping Creek Road. Also, mental health is a real issue for young people in Manningham. Unfortunately, Manningham has no dedicated facility and is transport disadvantaged. So we are calling for local headspace service based in Manningham. We are also calling for federal government to take action allowing the inquiry into following the inquiry into homelessness and provide funding arrangements to local governments to support affordable housing. Council's advocacy campaign have already started over the past few months. If the advocacy priorities for the 2022 federal election campaign is endorsed, I encourage our residents to speak to the key local members of Parliament and candidates about the identified priorities to achieve the best possible outcome for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Chen actually did a really good job of going through that report, so there are quite a few points I won't duplicate. Councillor Chen covered all our advocacy points. I just wanted to cover the fact that our advocacy points have been released so that the community know what they are too, and they have had media releases, they've had key videos and publications that have gone with them so that the community can see what we are advocating for, and therefore they can use those advocacy media releases to contact their local state and federal candidates, as Councillor Chen said. We know that the federal election is coming up in May, and therefore it is part of local government to be the voice for our community and to advocate to our state and federal government for those key outcomes and projects that we need to benefit our community and keep them safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Any speakers against? Any speakers for? Councillor Lightbody.
I think this is a great initiative by council. Rather than, waiting around to see what commitments or promises are made by candidates or thought up by parties, of which we don't often get much, but instead we're going out and officially endorsing a number of key items that us as the local government body, the level of government closest to the people, seek funding and commitments for that we see as important for improving our community. I'm glad to see the broader advocacy areas such as affordable housing, transport infrastructure and mental health, but also a list of very specific projects such as Templestowe and Jumping Creek roads. And I think it's important that we're setting this standard, and our officers have provided heaps of detail on each project on the list, making it clear what we want and why we need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Any other speakers? Put that to a vote. Those in favour? That is unanimously carried. Thank you. Item 13, Chief Executive Officer. 13.1, Appointment of Authorised Officer, Planning and Environment Act 1987. Do I have a mover?
I move the recommendation be adopted.
Councillor De Monte moving. A seconder? Councillor Lightbody. Councillor De Monte? Nothing to add? Councillor Lightbody, nothing to add? Okay, I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you very much. 13.2, Informal Meetings of Councillors. Do I have a mover? Councillor Chen?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Conlon. Councillor Chen?
Nothing to add.
Councillor Conlon? Put that to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. 13.3, Documents for Sealing. Mover?
Madam Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Councillor Lang. Seconder? Councillor Lightbody. Councillor Lang?
Nothing further to add.
Councillor Lightbody? Put that to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Item 14, Urgent Business. There are no items of urgent business. Item 15, council reports and question time. Councillors, does anyone wish to provide a report or raise a question? No? Thank you. Item 16, confidential reports. Confidential reports. Do I have a mover? Councillor Conlon.
Yes, I'd like to move that council close the meeting to the public pursuant to sections 66(1) and 66(2)A of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider item 16.1 Strategic Property Portfolio SPP update concerning council business information, being information that would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released, and private commercial information being information provided by a business, commercial or financial undertaking that if released would unreasonably expose the business, commercial or financial undertaking to disadvantage.
Thank you, councillor. Seconder?
I second the motion, Madam Mayor.
There we go. So I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Therefore, we will be ending the meeting and the live streaming and commence our closed meeting. Thank you.